So the Nature Conservancy is the world's largest conservation nonprofit. Our mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. Our work focuses primarily on the interconnected crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. We are headquartered in the US, but we are a global organization. We have staff on the ground doing conservation work all around the world. So why is this important? Why is branding important? Why is cartography a part of that? In any organization, particularly an organization as large as TNC, it's important in all of our communication materials that we are speaking with one voice. So whether a communications piece is coming from Kentucky or from Kenya, it still looks like it's coming from the Nature Conservancy. And maps are an important part of this because at the Nature Conservancy, almost everything we do is ultimately tied to a place. Even something as broad as, say, global climate policy, that still touches down in individual places that are affected by sea level rise or increased wildfire severity or drought or what have you. The example I have here shows freshwater conservation projects around the world. About 450 conservation projects are represented on this map, and every one of those points could be its own map or multiple maps, and this is just one small facet of our work. So maps are very important to what we do. A little bit of background on our cartography guidelines. We have long had guidance on branding and visual identity. Cartography was not really much a part of that until a little bit more recently. We had a working group that we formed comprised of geospatial and marketing staff around 2019. And in any organization that wants to be developing guidelines around maps and cartography, you absolutely need to have your GIS people and your marketing and communications people talking to each other. That was important. What grew out of this work was a standalone static guidance document for cartography in PDF format. And where we are now, and I will show you at the end of our talk, is an interactive website that includes all of our branding guidance, and cartography is a part of that. And what we are after here is not for everything to look exactly the same, to be uniform, but at least to have some unity among our communications. Our guidelines are organized around the topics that you see here. We don't have time to go into detail on every one of these, but we will hit some highlights, and I will turn it over to Alicea now to get us started on that.
Thank you, Chris. So the first section of our cartography guidelines is our ethics section. And in it, we've taken well-known cartography code of ethics and added to it our organizational values, such as high ethical and professional standards, active involvement from the people and partners in the places we work, collective and collaborative efforts, and enduring innovative solutions. To ensure that our maps and data visualizations reflect this, we've got guidelines on things like map credits and legal disclaimers. We work in a lot of places with border disputes, so we also have directions on how to handle that, generally and specifically based on audience and distribution of the map when the borders do need to be displayed. And finally, in an effort to decolonize and partner with Indigenous peoples and local communities, we have guidance on working with and representing Indigenous lands on maps. In many sections, we have included both static and web-based guidance combined, such as in the composition section. In this section, we cover layout, map elements such as legends and the use of north arrows, and appropriate logo usage. Shown here are two examples of how layouts can be addressed with both static and web maps. So the first example, the Borneo forest cover map, shows a static layout. It's annotated to call out the visual hierarchy of the map. And then we also provide examples of web maps and how a typical column and row-based grid designs, as you can see on the screen, can be translated into, a web map that takes up the whole page, or maybe one that has a side panel for user interaction. We do have one section that is specific to interactive maps, and in it we explore how to be intentional with designing your user interface, using features like splash screens and pop-ups, and how user interaction with layers needs to be considered since it affects the experience of the web app. We also discuss specific web accessibility issues, and the screenshot here, which might be a little hard to see, is a checklist to help web designers think through the what and how when they are designing and testing for web accessibility. The reason we have a separate section for interactive maps is because it introduces new learning curves. So we dive into larger details that go beyond the common web versus print guidelines that you usually see that might just focus on like font size. This is helpful because we have a lot of GIS professionals that were used to creating static maps, and now they're being asked to create web maps. And different thought processes are really needed for thinking through your design choices and the user experience while keeping to stakeholder wants and needs. We ask that people be intentional in deciphering what is necessary versus the shiny and fun distractions you can get on web maps that distract the user from the purpose. Additionally, static maps don't need regular maintenance unless the data changes, but web maps definitely need a more watchful eye on them. So understanding concepts around ownership and stewardship is really important. And while this section is quite detailed, we really work to make this information accessible across platforms, geographies, and diverse skill levels without falling into the region of a how-to tutorial. And I will pass it back to Chris.
Thanks so much, Alicea. I've just got a couple more highlights of our guidelines, and then we'll wrap up. So the next thing we'll talk about is color, and what you're seeing across the top of the screen here. This is our brand color palette. And for certain maps, for simple maps, maybe you can get away with just pulling from this color palette. But of course, for cartography, it's helpful to have a much more extensive color palette to draw from. So we've expanded that greatly across a wider range of views, across tints and shades, while still incorporating those brand colors. And within the color section in our guidelines, we do get quite a bit into accessibility as well. Last but certainly not least, one of the most important pieces of our guidance is typography. If you want all of your communications to look consistent, it's very important to focus on typography and fonts. And if we could do nothing more than just get everybody using the same typeface on their maps and communications, that would really go a long way to bringing some consistency. So we have adopted Barlow as our primary typeface. That's a free Google font, makes it super easy for anybody across our organization to find that, install it, and start using it. Barlow has a lot of flexibility in that there are many different weights and styles. There's also a condensed version, which can be very important for cartography when you're trying to fit a lot of text into a very small space. We do use a font called Chronicle, as well as a serif font. That's a proprietary licensed font, but all our staff have access to that. And we've maintained that in large part because that is what our logo is based on. There are probably a few font nerds out here. You might see some similarities between that word and our logo. It's not exactly the same, but that is what our logo is based on and why we make use of that as well. So just some highlights of our guidelines. I'll talk a little bit about challenges that we have. First, we are a very large global organization. We have hundreds of disparate staff creating maps, doing geospatial work. We use a lot of different software tools. We do use ArcGIS Pro primarily, and in our organization, we have around 1,400 ArcGIS Pro licenses. Not every single one of those folks is making maps, but a lot of them are. We also work across widely varying geographies. The examples that you see here on the left is a map of a trail at a 200-acre preserve near where I live in Virginia. We're doing things like that, and then maps at continental or global scales and everything in between. So it's not really feasible, say, to just have a single map template. We're very much a science-based organization, and our scientists tend to want to pack lots and lots of really dense information onto maps, and it can be a challenge to try to rein that in and get folks to focus on just the most important message. And these cartography guidelines are part of our overall branding, but we also include a lot of kind of general cartographic best practices within that as well, and it's a little hard to draw that line of what's specific to branding versus just general best practices. And then how we measure success, and honestly, this is not something that I have a very good handle on yet, but something that I'm thinking about. I would love to be able to say that since we've introduced these cartography guidelines, our maps are 36.8% better, but of course, you can't really do that, right? But it's something that we're thinking about, and it's kind of more anecdotal at this point. So where are we going next? We are continuing to expand our guidance and best practices. We do have some templates that we've developed for static maps. We want to be expanding on that and always refining that, and also working on templates for web maps and apps. We do have some custom base maps that we've created, but that's an area that we can work on a lot more as well. And then in communicating this to our broad user community. We do have internal sources, an intranet where we have a lot of this information. I host a monthly cartography office hours for our internal staff to come and ask questions. But again, this is a constant area of work and challenge, is just getting this information in front of our global staff. All right, so I am going to show you all now where you can find more of this information on our branding and cartography guidelines if you want to explore a little bit on your own. All right, did you get that? No, seriously, it's brand.nature.org. This is a public site. It's meant for an internal audience. So feel free to explore on your own if you would like. Please do not widely redistribute this. The reason that this is public is because we work with a lot of contractors. We want those folks to be able to access this information without having to jump through a bunch of hoops to get behind our firewall. You will find a lot of links on here that are behind our firewall. And again, it's meant a little bit more for an internal audience, but just amongst friends here at NACIS, feel free to explore on your own. Please don't post to social media and that sort of thing. But just the one thing I'll close with here, which I think is really huge, this site includes all of our branding information developed by our marketing and communications folks, and cartography is integrated within that, which again, I think is really huge. And that is all we have. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that presentation. I mean, like Lee said, kind of a gargantuan effort. Where do you all kind of, I don't know if to draw the line is the right word, but obviously there's a lot of internal maps and working products that you and your staff are developing. Where is that line for meeting these best practices and brand structure? Is it when it's going to be a public-facing thing? And if that's the case, then does everything come across your desk or the marketing team's desk? And is it an effort on your part to check that the brand strategy is right for everything?
That is a great question. So Firstly, it is primarily for public-facing materials, right? And this is what I tell folks: if you're just making a map to bring out in the field to look at with a couple of colleagues, I don't really care what it looks like as long as it makes sense to you and helps you do your job, right? What this guidance is geared for, is anything that's going to have higher visibility than that. With the amount of staff and people we have making maps, there's no way on earth that I could see everything. I see barely anything, really. And there's times, honestly, when I see something that's public that I would have liked to have seen before it went out. But yeah, I'm working on that, and I tend to insert myself into conversations, right? Like if I see something like that, somebody has put a map out in a presentation or what have you, and it could be better, I might contact them and say, hey, I'm here and I can help you. But yeah, it's a big challenge because we have such a large staff, and it's hard to get all of those people on the same page. And I'm viewing this kind of with a long view of changing the culture ultimately, and that takes a long time.
I just want to ask a quick follow-up. So, are you doing I'm sure you are, but because the brand strategy stuff is an end goal for the public-facing maps, how much effort are you all putting in to really push this stuff just as a change in what everyone's basic workflow is? So anytime I'm going to make a map, then I just am going to. Are you pushing hey, no matter what you're doing, maybe try to use this color palette so that if it does go to publication at the end, even if there's no chance of that happening, it's change those basic practices from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's not something I've thought a lot about, but I think for the most part, as awareness is increasing that we have this guidance, people are starting with that regardless of the ultimate disposition of that map, whether it's going to stay internal or, sometimes these things do tend to take on a life of their own, where maybe somebody makes something to share with a colleague, and the next thing you know, it's in a state director's presentation to our board or something. So yeah, that's a great point, and we probably could be doing more to encourage just this is the baseline, and you start here regardless of where it's going to end up.
Great. Let's grab one more here.
Hey, thank you. Do you have a specific set of guidelines for place names and countries that you recognize, how you draw boundaries and borders?
Great question. We do not have specific guidance other than work with the local community where needed on that. Alicea talked about the kind of some of the standard disclaimers that we have, and one of those is around place names that essentially says we don't hold ourselves out as an arbiter of any place name or country boundaries. And with respect to national borders, our guidance is just don't show country borders where feasible, right? We're a conservation organization. A lot of times we're working with ecological data that doesn't really respect fixed borders anyway. But where we do have to include country borders, it can be tailored to the place that map is going. This is a particular challenge because we work in both India and China, both of whom have very different ideas of where that border is. And in many of our global maps, that border just is not shown at all where it's disputed. That was really the only thing where our staff in both India and China could agree, if the border just isn't on the map.
Okay, thank you guys. We might have a couple more, but let's keep it going. We'll circle back.
Thank you all.
Yeah.